Because we've got so many different parts moving on along, and we're having a lot of different conversations, and I'm constantly approached by ASCE members. If those of you that attended the ASCE Inspire conference last fall know there's a lot of interest in this from the practicing and engineering community and the research engineering community. So just to try to do as best a job as possible to keep everybody informed, we've been working with NOAA. We've made some adjustments. The Climate Program Office through Ben has been tremendous. Not only do they give us access to Megan, but Megan puts in a lot of time working with us on a variety of different products. What we've done is we've kind of leveraging the University of Maryland as the host, which is of course the current arrangement. We've developed a bit of a communications plan that I'm going to let Megan walk through because she put a lot of it together. But I think the real goal here is just to, try to keep as many people that are interested in this topic as possible informed about how much benefit we're deriving from working with the federal agencies, especially NOAA. I think the more people are aware of that, the more they understand, why the Atlas 15 timeline is evolving the way it's evolving, how we're working and coordinating with the different ASCE standard committees and the authoring committees of various manuals of practice. I think there'll just be more and more support for the idea, which is going to be, I think, really important if we're going to sustain this level of effort in the future, because that's what we really want. We don't want one-off climate service support for one cycle of 2 or 3 standards. We want this to be embedded as an ongoing relationship. So Megan, with that kind of long-winded introduction, can you just walk us through a little bit about the goals of the communication plan and some of the elements, and then we can chat about, see if anybody has any additional suggestions.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. So I'll start with, my name is Megan Edwards. I provide contractor support to Ben D'Angelo, and part of that is providing secretariat support to the ASCE-NOAA Task Force on Climate Resilience and Engineering Practice. As Dan said, to provide timely updates to all the different interested parties. They're planning to launch 3 communication products over the next couple of months, and they asked me to present about it, so I will now do so. There's been a lot of growth with the ASCE-NOAA Task Force since this picture from the February 2023 summit, and individuals interested in the ASCE-NOAA Task Force videos or other basic details generally are having to email one of the 3 ASCE-NOAA Task Force co-chairs. So these planned communication products will streamline the communications on regularly requested information, and I will discuss them further in the next slides. So the initial concept for the monthly newsletter is to replace the current emails you'll get with the ASCE-NOAA Task Force action items from the past meeting and the preview of the upcoming meeting. And additional content would be added to these newsletters to fulfill the needs of the Memorandum of Understanding between the University of Maryland, ASCE, and NOAA. And one of the items already planned in the newsletter would be a link to an updated website. The current ASCE-NOAA Task Force website on the ASCE domain and others could link to this maintained single website to reduce duplication of effort and any confusion that could be caused by outdated information. And this newsletter and website together would work to make sure people within the federal family as well as ASCE members are kept in the loop as they wish to be. And this is my last slide. So one of the most commonly requested items are the videos of the presentations to the ASCE-NOAA Task Force. Previously, the only option was the entirety of the meeting. and most of these meetings are 2 hours long. So in recognition that most people are only really interested in have time maybe to watch one particular topic, the ASCE-NOAA Task Force co-chairs requested the presentations and the corresponding question and answer sessions be created into individual files that could be reviewed on YouTube to increase the accessibility across platforms. So these videos will be available on the University of Maryland YouTube channel, which that is a screenshot of it. And that is also going to be linked into the website that I was mentioning previously, so that everything is connected for hopefully streamlined communications. Back to you, Dan.
All right, thanks, Megan. So I think the real I think the top level kind of communication piece or point I would like to make here is we're trying to push this information out to as many people as possible. So, for example, I'm working with Jay Snyder and Brian Parsons within ASCE to come up with a list of, like all of the members of the Committee on Adaptation to a Changing Climate will be given an opportunity to opt out of this newsletter. We're trying to work with other groups. I know Brian has access to other groups. So, we're trying to figure out how to, get this out to as wide an audience as possible. I think that the other benefit of it is it will drive more interest in individual topics. For example, we've had a lot of people were very interested in Ken Kunkel's presentation on the Atlas 15 Volume 2, how we're going to do future conditions through Atlas 15. So there's always a lot of interest. We had some access issues. We settled on the University of Maryland site because it's the easiest for us to maintain. It's not a NOAA site. It's not an ASCE site. It's a dedicated site to the task force. That means that we can give Megan access to it and she can edit it, or we can give access to other individuals. Every time Megan creates something, it becomes NOAA intellectual property. And so then we have a little bit of trouble getting access. I can't move it. So we think we've addressed all of those issues. But I think it really is more of a kind of a testament to what we're trying to do here, that we have more and more people are interested. I think we're going to have a fair amount of traffic there. And as new products come out, new reports, the workshop report that will probably generate this summer, I think it's just going to continue to bear fruit. I think the main thing is that we would like to do is make sure that relevant NOAA sites or relevant federal agency sites that might be, providing data or other content can be flagged and incorporated into the newsletter so that we get as much cross traffic as possible. One of the original motivations of this whole effort was to try to help ASCE practicing engineers in particular understand how to find their way around various federal sites. When you're doing a $20 million project, you have time to have somebody do searches for data and products, but a lot of ASCE members work on much smaller projects. They work for smaller firms. They need as much access to that information, even though it might be a smaller project. So I just think this is going to really expand the capability of practicing engineers to tap into federal information in a more efficient way, and maybe develop some feedback so that we understand what people are really using and how they're utilizing it. I know NCEI has a lot of data on use for the historical data, but now that we're moving into this phase where we're going to be doing more and more with projections of future conditions, I think that feedback's going to be really, really helpful. Does anybody have any questions about the communications plan, or how, if you have suggestions for how you want your agency to participate, we'd be more than happy to entertain those. So any quick reactions?
Dan, this is not Dan. This is Norma Jean. I'm sorry I arrived late to the meeting, but I'm here, and I had two questions. First one involves the maintenance of the website and who is responsible for the production of the newsletters as this moves beyond this year into the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, as our federal agencies often say, it's all predicated on availability of funds, right? But for at least the foreseeable future, Megan is going to support this effort through support from the Climate Program Office. So it's really, I would say, ultimately, it's the task force co-chairs and Megan have the primary responsibility. And that's where we kind of got into some things. If we create content, if NOAA creates content and then puts it on the University of Maryland website, then I can't move it around because I'm not a NOAA employee. And so we tried a variety of different configurations, and this seems to work the best. It's easier for us to give Megan access to a Maryland website than the other way around. Did you have another question?
Yeah, and the second question involves how do we, or has there been discussions already on how do we roll this out so that more ASCE members have awareness of this as it gets fleshed out and as it provides value to the practicing engineer? And that's from the ASCE side, but the same could be said from the federal side. How do we keep this current as things move around, and how other things may make sense to be tacked into this from a federal partnership partner point of view?
Right. No, that's good. Well, I got a quick response, and then I'll open it up to others because I know Brian and others are that's part of the reason why they're here, especially Jay Snyder. I think that we're going to start small. Because basically the initial outreach will be through email, and everybody that's on the task force, everybody that's ever attended a task force meeting. I think all of the workshop attendees from 2022, all of those email addresses, the attendees of the summit in February of 2023, we've got all of those emails. They'll all get an initial email about the newsletter and signing up for the newsletter. I think I've had some very preliminary discussions with Jay and Brian about how to do that within within ASCE. EWRI obviously has a lot of relevant committees. COPRI, which those of you that are new, Norma Jean is the current president of the Coasts, Oceans, Ports, and River Institute of ASCE. We're open to suggestions, but that piece of it, I think we're going to need to coordinate through ASCE staff that support these different bodies. But maybe Brian or Jay, if you want to weigh in, this would be a good time.
This is a good time. In fact, Norma, thank you for asking that question. I just had a discussion actually with the ASCE Executive Director, Tom Smith, about how to put in place a organizational component that reports to the ASCE board that addresses cross-cutting topics, such as the topic of the NOAA ASCE task force, such as sustainability, issues related to resilience, nature-based solutions that cut across the technical silos that are presently existing in terms of the ASCE institutes and various units of CTA. The best place for that kind of website to reside, such that our members will have a sense of what's going on in ASCE and NOAA, would be in that space. We have not yet put it in place. We haven't instantiated that reporting structure, but that is an ongoing effort, and it will be a part of the ASCE recommendations related to the strategic plan. So Norma, the short of it is that we're looking at a place where those cross-cutting topics will have a web presence on the ASCE website.
Excellent. All right, sounds good. Jay, did you have a comment?
I don't have a comment. I have a question, Dan, if you don't mind. And it's similar to what Norma Jean just asked. initially, the initial communication to hopefully as many members as we can get to is for them to either opt in or opt out of the newsletter. That doesn't mean as ASCE staff, we will be sending out the newsletter however often, quarterly, monthly, that sort of thing. We just need to know if they'd like to opt in and opt out. And obviously a lot of people are going to want to opt in. Once we get past that, how is the newsletter delivered to those that have opted in?
It would be an email. It would be emailed.
Okay.
I also
Through-
wonder if we could have, and we'll work this through on ASCE, but we have a recurring communication called the civil engineering source. I'm not sure how many of you get that, but I would imagine that we could set up a column called NOAA ASCE Task Force as a part of the civil engineering source.
No, that sounds good.
Good idea, Brian.
We're going to try to leverage as many opportunities as possible. And just so you know, the newsletter itself, we'll be talking about the newsletter on these calls. So if your community of practice that you're engaged with needs particular consideration, or you have ideas about how to get the word out more systematically, once you've seen the newsletter, and the newsletter is going to evolve, believe me, because the biggest part of it is initially the content for the newsletter will largely come from task force meetings. We have a lot of people on CAC that are very eager to know what's going on. We can't have them all attend these task force meetings. So, they're just looking for, the latest updates. So initially, at least, the content's going to be derived largely by the task force, and the scope of it will be determined by the agendas. So, as members of the task force, you can offer suggestions. We can explore how to leverage the activity. Kind of along those lines, the Committee on Adaptation to a Changing Climate, which, as Jay mentioned, I'm the immediate past chair of CAC. CAC and EWRI have been working together on this task force and on NBS and other topics for 2 or 3 years at least. CAC is interested in developing a product, a blog type product. The inspiration of this is coming from the current vice chair of CAC, Craig Musselman. Sihan Lee, for those of you that are new to the call, Sihan's on the call today. He's the chair of CAC. I'm the immediate past chair. Mari Tai, who's often on these calls, is a past chair. Bilal is a past chair. So you see there's a lot of CAC DNA in this, but Craig Musselman is a practicing coastal engineer in New Hampshire. He was a county selectman for 12 years. He really understands engineering practice, civil engineering practice at a regional scale, owns his own engineering firm. So I see him as a real card-carrying practicing engineer. Craig has suggested, and CAC is developing a blog which would be really focused on short articles. I almost think of them as technical notes, very fact-based, not op-eds, we're not trying to tap into everybody's anxiety or desire to argue about stuff, but really just kind of factual notes that would be focused primarily on the kinds of questions and answers that Craig often encounters. So that concept is going to grow, and as it evolves and we're ready to pull the plug, we can talk about it more on the task force. But I think that's just another example of, I think there's going to be a lot of efforts to try to promote information exchange around climate and civil engineering practice at a very, broad level, not just codes and standards, but just, a whole variety of questions. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to cross-pollinate. We would love to, be able to reach out to this group and, maybe get John Ingargiola to craft 500 or 600 words on building codes, or, get something from Allison about, what's cool at NASA now and what they might be interested in, but really very kind of fact-based content. And Craig's got a real eye and ear for that because he is a practicing engineer. And so, I think there's going to be a lot of those little kinds of efforts that we can try to pull in and cross advertise through a newsletter. And I know one of the things that I've asked Jay about, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think the attendees for the Inspire conference would be a great target audience for something like this newsletter. So, we just got to put our heads together and kind of think through, what makes sense, how to get the word out, how to leverage these different communication activities. And we know the federal agencies have websites and content that's kind of might lend itself to this as well. So, we just have to be cognizant of Megan's only got so many hours in a day. And so, and we're not the only committee she supports. But I think it's going to be a good, a little energy boost here, I think, for making sure folks know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Dan.
I would just,
Oh,
I
go
guess
ahead, Terry.
part of me is worrying that we might get out in front of ourselves. Everybody wants to know what to do now. And there's a number of efforts to try to carefully construct a sound basis for this guidance. And, what point do we really feel like we're ready to share that information? If we want to talk about activities that are underway to help people understand what we're doing, that could be a perspective. I guess, want to make sure the intent of the newsletter is clear to everybody, because I think it's going to be a few years, whether we like it or not. I know everybody wants it now, where we can really say, this is the basis for starting to, form a national consensus. Otherwise, we can point to regional things that are underway, but are we saying this is a good thing to use? Because we haven't evaluated them. We just know they're out there. I just see a lot of issues coming up with this idea.
Well, I guess, I threw a lot at you all at once. The newsletter would be, like I said, a lot of the content from the newsletter is going to come from the task force meetings. And so, I think what our initial envision is, what is the task force? What's the purpose of the task force? What is the task force discussing? If we have presentations from the task force that people are interested in viewing, how do they access those? That's the direction we're going. It's not going to be,
Okay.
as I said, it's not going to be a, independent, here's how we recommend you handle X, Y, or Z. It's going to be more of a factual exchange. Allison?
I think Terry articulated some of my concerns, but you've addressed them. So let me just emphasize to say that I think it's sounds like a great place to say, here is who's involved in this activity and why we're involved in this activity. Here are some resources with, I think, Terry makes the point that we need to appropriately caveat it. So I would say, here are some resources for you that may be useful. You need to evaluate it for your fitness of purpose. And we as a group are taking a closer look at these issues so that we can provide more specific information down the road. So it's just contextualizing. And so I think Terry I just wanted to kind of echo Terry's comments and appreciate yours that sort of helped address some of those concerns.
Right. That sounds good. Thank you, Allison, for weighing in. Joe?
Yeah, I had, I agree that we should probably keep the scope of this relatively narrow. Otherwise, we can't be everything to everybody here. I'm curious how much your intention was to actually help us on the committee communicate with one another. For example, sharing things like relevant documents that we, links to various standards, links to timetables. One thing that would be useful for me is to synthesize all the different sort of timetables that we're aware of. And Joe, I mean, John was actually mentioning a few I hadn't heard of. And I mean, just things like that where is this the appropriate place? Or we could do that also somewhere else, like a Google Drive or something, but more internal communication.
We can certainly work on that, more internal and communication. I mean, we have the Google Drive, you have access to all of the recordings in their entirety, which would be different than what would be accessible through the website. So you have meetings in their entirety, you have all the agendas, but if you're interested in sharing articles, et cetera, we can work with Megan, and we can find a way to do that, more of a task force only resource. So I think
Well, these don't necessarily have to be task force only. They could be things like building up a list of references so that when we contribute to, and also helping people like doing it, the chapter 36. I mean, I've been passing on a bunch of references saying, hey, this is the reference that supports this kind of climate science that you're looking into. That kind of, particularly that. I mean,
to clarify, Terry, I'm totally on board with you. It's just that we have so many requests for information. We have to come up with a different mechanism. What the scope of that mechanism is, what's identified as federally sourced, what's an ASCE product, we will work through and we'll keep everybody in the loop. So don't hesitate to bring that up again, or if you're getting anxious about something, let me know, because your perspectives on this is all well deserved, well earned, I'm sure.